You're listening to the Joe and Rosa Show, proclaiming the gospel through word and through song.
Hi, and welcome to the Joe and Rosa Show. I'm Joe.
And I'm Rosa.
And with us today we have Courtney Kacer, author of the book From Drugs to Jesus. How are you today, Courtney?
I'm good. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for being here. And so, Courtney, your testimony is something that I really think you should just speak as the Lord would lay it on your heart to do so. So if you would, can you just tell us your story? How did you go from drugs to Jesus?
Yeah, absolutely. It was one of those things where I lived a life growing up in a Christian home. I had amazing parents. They went to all my sporting events, and I'm the oldest of 4 kids. We just had a really tight-knit family, and just growing up, I was just kind of one of those people that really was more of an attention seeker, and always wanting to feel accepted. And even though my family was very loving, always told me they loved me, I was still looking for that acceptance from my peers and from just my friends and, society as a whole. And so once I started getting into my high school years, I actually, I started playing sports, and I was in a very constructive environment where that personality that I had, where I was continuously looking for attention, was more constructive, and I was able to kind of play that out and get what I needed through sports in a healthy environment. But the day that I stopped playing sports in my senior year of high school, that all changed for me. I immediately felt extremely lost. My identity was in sports and kind of that attention seeking and that fame from being good at sports for so long that once that career ended for me in high school, I didn't know who I really was. And I had gone to church all growing up, but I was never one of those people that really was, or it was my own. It was my parents' faith, and it was my family's faith. And so, once I graduated from high school, I went to San Diego State, and it was the first year where I was just completely on my own, not under the roof of my parents, not under, their strict rules and guidelines. And I was able to really kind of explore to be who I wanted to be. And unfortunately, I went into an extremely wild direction. I started drinking alcohol right when I got to the college campus, and eventually that turned into using drugs. I started off with just smoking weed, and then it went into ecstasy, and eventually kind of went into some of the harder drugs and moving around. And through those years, as I was trying to find who I really was and who my identity was, it was all about pleasing the people around me so that I could get that attention and feel accepted and feeling loved. And unfortunately, I just fell into the hands of the completely wrong crowd and looking for that love and acceptance in all the wrong places. For so long, I felt that if I just had, a boyfriend or a husband and I got married, then that would fulfill me. And I would go from boyfriend to relationship and to a different relationship, and always kind of still feeling that emptiness. And so through that emptiness, I would hide that with going out and partying and drinking and trying to be that fun person that everybody wanted to hang out with, and then getting into the drugs and trying to blind that pain that I was feeling from the emptiness that I was feeling because I didn't have that close relationship. So there was at one point where I moved to Florida. I wasn't finding anybody that I wanted to date, or nobody was interested in me at that time in San Diego, and the emptiness just kind of overwhelms me. So I thought, okay, well, let's go do a change of scenery. So I dropped out of school, and I moved to Florida where my cousin lived. And there is when I really got into the hardcore drugs. I don't know how or why, but the change of scenery did not fix the hole and the emptiness in my heart, and that I was so looking forward to. And so at one point, my first week that I was in Florida, I found myself in a crack house. You know, it was kind of one of those houses where you walk in and they haven't paid their electricity bill, so you've got candles lit everywhere, and you've got people sitting all over the places, and that was the first time that I had tried crack. And I never in a million years would have ever thought that I would have put myself in that position, but here I was in that position. And, you know, it was probably one of the most scariest moments of my life, but it was that moment that really kind of went downhill for me from there. So for the next couple of years, I was just partying it up, and eventually God got to me. I was one day just listening to some music. I think it was Evanescence at that time, and they had a song that they were talking about, and it was called Tourniquet, and how can I stop the bleeding? And I just felt so lost and so empty, and how can I fill this void that I kept feeling and stop numbing the pain that I was having? And in that small moment of clarity, God prompted me to call my parents. And I actually took that prompting and called my parents, and I asked them for them to bring me home, and that I needed help, and I needed to get back on track. And it's a little emotional, but it's one of those things where, it's, you know, living back and looking at those moments, and if God had not prompted me to call my parents, I have no idea where I would be today. There were so many different places where I could have died. I could have overdosed so many different times, and there could have been so many different things that could have happened to me, like ending up in jail, or, you know, even just so much bad things. And I look back today, and by the grace of God, He had His hand on me that whole time. And I know that once I finally was able to fully surrender to Christ, I was able to just realize the sovereignness of God and the love that He has. And I finally found that the love and acceptance that I was looking for was in Him the whole entire time. I just had to reach out and grab His hand. And, you know, it's just one of those processes that I went to. And it took me a couple of years to finally get to that point, but I am just so amazed at God's love, and, you know, it doesn't matter what I did in the past, and looking at that, He still loves me today. And that's kind of the story that I want to get out to people, is that it doesn't matter what we've done in our past or how many bad things we've done, that by God's grace, He loves us anyways. And it's just such an amazing feeling.
That's truly an amazing story. Now, Courtney, right now, somewhere there's somebody that's in the same situation you were in, that's feeling the same way, doing the same things. If they could hear you now, what would you say to them?
I would say reach out. Reach out to somebody and just ask for help. That is the hardest step, really, is admitting that you need help, and admitting that you're in a place in your life that you just don't want to be, you know, and just taking that step to reach out and get help, and praying. Praying is, you know, even if you don't necessarily know who God is, you know, just getting to that point where you just reach out. You know, God is standing right there, whether you think that you know Him or not, and He's just waiting for you to look up at Him and ask for help. And so reach out to somebody, pray, and just try to do that. And that's the first step. It's not the easy step, it's the hardest step, but that will definitely get you pointed into the right direction.
Yeah, and I'm absolutely overwhelmed, to be quite honest with you, because it's not a story. It's not something, it's absolutely God reaching down and changing your life. And it's absolutely powerful. I'm actually moved, I think, more than anybody else we've ever spoken to on our show before. And I just want to ask you, if there's somebody that would be listening right now and say that they're in the position where they have not yet taken that first step, but they find themselves tempted by people that are offering them alcohol, drugs, that sort of thing, what would you say to that person?
I would say it's really kind of a heart check, and really coming to terms and thinking about where you are with your life and what you really want out of it, and if you want to continue in that type of lifestyle, then you will allow yourself to be put into those positions where people could tempt you to drink alcohol or do drugs. We talk, there was a recovering group that I led for a few years, and one of the main things that we talked about was radical amputation. And the first step is admitting that you have a problem, but the second step is taking action on that decision. And, some of that action may be completely removing yourself from your friends and your family that may be tempting you into that position until you can get a grasp on the full situation and what you need to do to get yourself out of that situation. So I would definitely recommend, radical amputation. Remove yourself from those tempting situations. And it's a lot easier said than done, because breaking some of those relationships that we have, even though they may be bad relationships or very unhealthy relationships, they're still relationships, and they're the only thing that we know at that particular time. And so it's heartbreaking for us to have to try and make that decision. But, it's once you've decided that you don't want that for your life anymore, now it's time to put that into action. And that is the only way that you're going to be able to start helping pick yourself up and relying on God's grace to get you through.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's one final question that I just feel that I have to ask, because you said that you sat under teaching and that you were in church. There are people leading churches and youth groups all across America who might never think that their kids would be vulnerable to fall prey to things like this. What would you say to them to be aware of and maybe to speak to them who are listening today?
It's in today's society, drugs and alcohol are more prevalent than ever. I think today there's more heroin out on the streets moving across the nation, with kids dying of overdoses every single day. And if you look at my story, I grew up in a Christian home. I mean, there was absolutely no reason for me to go down that path. I didn't have a specific tragedy that happened to me that really kind of pushed me into that darkness. It was my own choice. And a lot of what I think that parents and church leaders and youth leaders today don't realize is that kids are looking to fill that void. They want to find that love and acceptance. And that's really the core problem of society today, is we're lost. And we don't realize that void and that emptiness that we feel is the love and acceptance of Christ that needs to fill that void. And so if we can kind of just understand that that is the core issue, then we'll know how we can look to, the kids and different people in our church today to know how they're struggling. And if we can adhere and kind of look and encourage people in that way and letting them know, hey, there's an emptiness in each side of us. And God has kind of intertwined and wired us to have relationships, but that relationship is supposed to be with Him for that love and acceptance. And teaching God's love, I think, will help just encourage people and help kind of try to nip that problem in the bud, but trying to really get that to that core issue is really the issue that we need to look at. And that's, making sure that our people in the society that are going into churches and that our teenagers today feel love and know that it's God's love.
Absolutely. So powerful. And I thank you for being on our show today, Courtney Kacer. Can you tell our listeners where they can find you online and where they can find your book, From Drugs to Jesus?
Absolutely. I have started up a women's ministry called Women 180, and you can go to women180.org, which is WOMEN180.org. And there you can find encouraging blog posts that we send out to people who are struggling on a day-to-day basis. And then my book, Rescued from Drugs to Jesus, is under my maiden name, Courtney Smith, and you can find that at Amazon, Zulon Press, which is Xulon, and you can find it on Kindle, iBook, and Barnes & Noble, I believe, has it on their reader as well. So you can find it in all those places.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Courtney Kacer, for being on the Joe and Rosa Show today.
Thank you so much for having me.